I was 7 months pregnant the night Logan kicked me. It started with something small, a grocery list I forgot. He came home tired, irritated, and smelled like bourbon, though he swore he wasn't drinking anymore. He opened the fridge, saw we were out of orange juice, and slammed the door so hard the magnets fell. "You don't do anything around here," he muttered. I told him I'd had a rough day. The baby had been pressing on my back all morning, and I'd barely slept the night before. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. But that didn't stop him. "You're just a burden now," he spat. Then, as I turned to walk away, his foot connected with my side. Not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to send me down. I remember the sound of my own body hitting the floor more than the pain, and the look on his face afterward, how quickly it changed from rage to indifference, like he'd just knocked over a chair. He didn't help me up, just stood there, muttered something about drama, and walked into the other room. I lay there, hands cradling my stomach, whispering, "Please be okay, please be okay." That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the ceiling, counted the seconds between the baby's movements. I debated calling someone, my sister, a neighbor, even the police. But then I remembered how Logan had smiled at the baby shower, how he'd kissed my belly last week, telling our daughter she'd be the most loved girl in the world. So I stayed, because part of me still believed he might be that man again. The next morning, he was back to his charming self, making eggs, humming some song from the 80s. I sat at the table, silent. He kissed my cheek and said, "You were overreacting. You know how emotional you get." I nodded, because I didn't know what else to do. I started keeping notes after that. A secret log in the back of a parenting book. Every insult, every threat, every bruise hidden under sleeves. I wrote them down like I was recording history, as if proof would matter one day. I stopped talking to friends. I lied to my sister, Colleen, when she asked how things were going. "He's excited for the baby," I told her. "He rubs my feet every night." What I didn't say was that sometimes he squeezed too hard. That once I cried in the shower just from the way he looked at me. The baby came 2 months later, early but strong. Her lungs worked just fine. She screamed the moment she entered the world, and I cried. Not from pain, but relief. She made it. We named her Grace. Logan was there for the birth, held my hand, smiled for photos, handed out cigars like he was the proudest father on earth. For a few weeks, I let myself believe things might get better, until I found a receipt in his jacket pocket from a clinic downtown. A paternity test. And the name on the form was Grace. I held the receipt for a long time before I confronted him. It was small, folded tight, like he'd meant to throw it out. A single line, Rapid Results DNA Testing Center, patient, Grace Alden. It felt like being slapped. Not because he doubted me, but because he went behind my back to confirm it. I waited until after Grace's bath. She was finally asleep, curled like a comma in her bassinet, her tiny fists tucked beneath her chin. I stood in the doorway, the receipt between my fingers. "Did you really do this?" I asked. Logan didn't look up from the couch. "Do what?" "This," I said, holding it out. "You tested her. You tested our daughter behind my back." He rolled his eyes. "Don't be dramatic. I had a right to know." "A right to know what? That your child, our child, is yours. Why would you even doubt that?" He finally stood. "You think I don't remember how you acted that month you stayed at your sister's? All the space you needed?" I blinked. "That was because you screamed at me in front of her kids, because you were drinking every night." He stepped closer. "Maybe. Or maybe you were seeing someone. I don't know. I just needed to be sure." His words hit like bricks. He said them casually, like he was explaining why he ordered the wrong kind of milk. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My body wanted to scream, but my mouth stayed shut. He brushed past me. I'll get the results soon anyway. And if it's mine, we move on. If not, well, then we've got a different conversation. That night, I lay beside Grace, heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would wake her. The next morning, Colleen called. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. "You've gone quiet on me," she said. "Everything okay?" And like always, I lied. "Just tired, newborn things. You know you can come stay here, right? Even for a weekend, just to breathe." I almost said yes. But I glanced over at Logan, shirtless in the kitchen, scrolling through his phone like he hadn't accused me of infidelity the night before. "I'll think about it," I told her. But I wouldn't. Not yet. Because the moment I left, Logan would say I was proving his point, that I was guilty, that I was running. Instead, I started planning. Quietly, carefully. I applied for a part-time data entry job Colleen had mentioned months ago. Remote, flexible hours. I didn't tell Logan. I used the guest Wi-Fi at the library to submit my resume. I also opened a second bank account. Small. Just enough for groceries and diapers. I told the clerk I was setting up a rainy day fund. She smiled. She didn't know the storm had already started. I made sure Grace had copies of her birth certificate tucked in the baby book. I made digital backups of everything: our insurance, my ID, the photos of bruises from last fall. Because part of me knew the DNA results would come. And when they did, whether he was the father or not, Logan would never see me or Grace the same again. The envelope came a week later. I recognized the clinic's logo right away. Logan tore it open in the kitchen, acting like he was reading a bill. I stood across the room, heart pounding. He read silently, then tossed the paper on the counter like it meant nothing. "She's mine," he said. I waited for relief to come. It didn't. Instead, he walked past me, muttering, "You're lucky." Lucky? As if being believed was some favor he'd extended. Later that night, he poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and sat on the porch like he owned the quiet. I stood inside, holding Grace, listening through the screen. He called someone. "I got the results," he said. "Yeah, it's fine. I'll figure the rest out soon." My skin prickled. I couldn't hear the other voice, but I could tell by the way he lowered his voice. It was a woman. I didn't say anything, just turned and walked back upstairs. The next day, he was unusually kind. Made coffee, kissed my forehead, bought a new blanket for Grace's crib. "I want us to start fresh," he said, wrapping his arm around my shoulder like a noose. No more secrets. But his phone stayed locked. His laptop, too. That weekend, Colleen stopped by with a box of baby clothes from her neighbor. She hadn't seen Grace since the hospital. "Wow," she said, lifting Grace into her arms. "She's beautiful. You look tired." I forced a smile. "Newborn life." She glanced around the house. Logan wasn't home. "So, how are things? Really?" I hesitated too long. Colleen narrowed her eyes. "Helen." I looked down. "He's trying. We've had rough patches, but he says he wants to change." She didn't nod, didn't smile. "I don't like him." My eyes snapped up. "Colleen." "No. I didn't like how he looked at you at the baby shower. I didn't like how you flinched when he raised his voice. I let it go because you said he was just stressed. But I've been through this, Helen. You know that." Her voice cracked, just for a second. I remembered her ex. Russell. The one who left bruises, and then flowers. She stayed 3 years too long. She still had the scar on her shoulder from the time he pushed her into the bathroom mirror. I looked at her and wanted to spill everything, but Logan's voice echoed in my head. "You'll ruin this family with your drama." Instead, I just said, "Thanks for checking in." After she left, I added more to my folder. Screenshots, voice memos, photos. I backed it up on a flash drive and hid it in the diaper bag, beneath the wipes. That night, Logan didn't come home. When I called, It went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't need to. At 2:14 a.m., the front door clicked open. He came in quietly, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. I didn't speak. He didn't apologize. Just dropped onto the couch and passed out, fully clothed. The next morning, Grace wouldn't stop crying. I held her, fed her, rocked her, but nothing helped. Logan stayed in bed, hungover and useless. I paced the nursery, whispering to my daughter through tears. "I'm trying," I told her. "I'm trying to get us out." And for the first time, I believed it. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I learned the woman's name. Logan had left his laptop open. He usually didn't. He was meticulous with it, clearing his history, closing every tab. But he was in a rush, and I was standing right there. The screen was still on a messaging app I didn't recognize. Not email, not texts. Just a conversation window open with a woman named Mallory. Her last message said, "Last night was perfect. She doesn't suspect anything, does she?" My hand trembled as I scrolled. There were weeks of messages, photos, jokes, plans. He'd told her everything about me, except the truth. He called me needy, manipulative, a dead weight. He told her he was trapped, that Grace was the only reason he hadn't left yet. I didn't cry. I just took pictures of the screen. Every message, every thread. Sent them to the cloud, to my flash drive, to my private inbox. I moved like I was on autopilot. Like this betrayal wasn't a shock, just a confirmation. When Logan came home, I didn't say a word. I kissed his cheek, handed him a beer, and smiled. I'd learned something important that day. He thinks I'm weak. That night, I called Colleen. "I think I'm ready," I whispered. Her breath hitched on the other end. "Say the word. I'll come tomorrow." "I need 2 weeks," I said. "To move quietly, to set things in place." She didn't argue. "Then I'll wait 2 weeks, but promise me something." "What?" "If anything happens, even a bad look, you call me, immediately." "I promise." Over the next 10 days, I moved like a ghost. I confirmed my job start date, wired small amounts from our joint account to mine, scheduled a locksmith at Colleen's house, packed Grace's things into boxes labeled "Donate," and hid them under the guest bed. I even rented a storage unit across town under a fake name. Every trip to the grocery store, I tucked something else away: wipes, formula, diapers. Logan didn't notice. He was too busy playing the role of the man of the house. He started sleeping with his phone under the pillow. One evening, he came home with flowers. Said we should go out soon. Just us. "I'll ask Colleen to babysit," he said. I laughed. She'd like that. But inside, I was already gone. Then came the bruise. I don't even remember what started the argument. Something about the trash, about laundry, about nothing, really. But his hand shot out before I could react, grabbing my wrist too tightly. I gasped and dropped the bottle I was holding. It shattered across the kitchen floor. He didn't apologize, just told me to clean it up, then went to bed. That night, as I nursed Grace in the dark, I felt the bruise bloom beneath my sleeve. This was my line, not the lie, not the infidelity, not the kick while pregnant, but the way he touched my body like it wasn't mine, like I didn't matter, like I wouldn't fight back. I woke up the next morning with the bruise darkening on my wrist and a plan sharpening in my mind. Colleen called while Logan was at work. "Is it time?" she asked without preamble. "Yes." She didn't ask for details. "Then here's what we'll do." We set the day for the following Wednesday. I would tell Logan I had a pediatric appointment for Grace across town, leave with just a diaper bag and a car seat, and never come back. Colleen would meet me at a rest stop halfway. We'd drive the rest of the way to her house together. I'd already secured a P.O. box, and Nathan, the lawyer Colleen had used during her own divorce, had agreed to meet us within the week. I'd been waiting for permission from somewhere, but I didn't need it anymore. I had urgency now. I had Grace. That weekend, Logan became clingier than usual. He insisted we take a family walk, that we dress Grace in matching outfits, that we post photos. He captioned one, "My girls." Couldn't do life without them. I almost laughed, but I smiled instead, because I had to. He started going through my drawers, my purse, my phone. "You've been quiet lately," he said one night. "Everything okay?" "Just tired." He watched me like a dog smelling smoke. He didn't believe me, not really. And I could feel him coiling tighter, sensing something slipping through his fingers. Then, the twist. Tuesday night, the night before my escape, he came home with news. "I've been offered a job in Atlanta," he said. "Big raise, big move. They want me to start next month." My chest tightened. "Atlanta? We'll have to pack quick. Find a new pediatrician. Sell the house. But it's a fresh start for all of us." Fresh start. The phrase felt like a trap. "I thought you liked it here," I said. "I did. But I need change, and so do you. We've both made mistakes." He was watching me closely now. Too closely. That night, I packed Grace's go bag and set 2 alarms. I barely slept. I fed Grace at 4 a.m., just like always. At 6:30, Logan left for work. At 7:10, I locked the door behind me for the last time. I drove in silence, checking the rearview mirror every few miles. I kept expecting him to call, to chase, but he didn't. Colleen was already at the rest stop. She opened the back seat and took Grace into her arms like she was made of glass. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said. "I started." We got in the car, drove away from everything. At her house, the room was ready. Diapers stacked on a shelf, bottles sterilized, a crib against the wall with a mobile that played soft lullabies. It felt like breathing after drowning. That night, I stood over Grace's crib and whispered, "We're safe now." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Until my phone buzzed. One message, from Logan. "You think I don't know what you're doing? You won't get far." The next morning, Colleen poured coffee like it was medicine and said, "We call the lawyer today." I nodded. I hadn't slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every buzz of my phone, every sound outside the window. It all felt like a warning. Nathan's voice was calm when we explained everything. I told him about the abuse, the messages, the paternity test, the bruise. I showed him the photos. I showed him the text. "You did everything right," he said, "but he's going to fight dirty." That message. It wasn't a bluff. He's trying to scare you. Expect more. "Can we file for emergency custody?" I asked. "Yes," he said, "and a protective order. I'll file them both today. It won't be instant, but it'll give us leverage if he tries anything." That night, Grace cried longer than usual. I rocked her while Colleen reheated dinner. "She feels it," Colleen said gently. "Babies know when something's off." I pressed my cheek to Grace's soft head. "I'm scared." "You're allowed to be," she said, "but you're not alone." The next few days passed like a fever dream. Nathan called regularly. Papers were signed. A hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. We didn't tell Logan. Let him react in court, not in a parking lot. But Logan didn't wait. That Friday, Colleen's neighbor knocked on the door. Said there was a man in a black car parked across the street. Said he'd been there for hours. I looked out the window. I knew that car. I froze. Colleen called the police. By the time they arrived, the car was gone. 2 hours later, I got an email. No subject line, no signature, just a photo. Me. At the grocery store that morning. Grace in the carrier on my chest. The message underneath, "You're still mine. Don't forget that." Colleen pulled me into a hug as I shook. "He's watching me," I whispered. "He's here." We called Nathan. He sent an emergency notice to the court. We documented the email. Colleen installed a camera by the door, and I stopped leaving the house unless it was with her or for court prep. Then, one night, I made a mistake. I forgot to close my email tab on Colleen's laptop, and I saw it. A message. From Mallory. He's spiraling. You need to come home. He says he's going to take the baby. He says if the courts won't help, he'll handle it himself. I stared at the screen, frozen. The timestamp was from that morning. I printed it, sent it to Nathan, then deleted the message. Colleen found me in the bathroom 30 minutes later, sitting on the tile with the shower running, fully clothed. I left him, I whispered, and he still owns the air around me. She sat beside me, didn't speak, just stayed. The next day, a court clerk called. Our protective order had been approved. The hearing would still go forward, but now I had a document. Something that said, this happened. And it's not okay. It was a start. But I knew Logan, and he wasn't going to accept a piece of paper. The morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the mirror longer than I needed to. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. Not because she looked different. Same tired eyes, same dark roots peeking through the blonde, but because she was standing taller. Her shoulders were straighter, her mouth set firm. This wasn't the version of me who begged for love. This was the one who had something to protect. Nathan met us at the courthouse steps. He carried 2 folders, thick with documentation, photos, emails, time-stamped messages, the restraining order. You ready? He asked. No, I admitted. But I'm going in anyway. Logan was already inside. His suit was pressed, his hair neatly combed, his smile fake and polished. Mallory sat in the row behind him, dressed like someone trying to look like a sympathetic stepmother. When he saw me enter, he didn't scowl. He didn't shout. He winked. That single motion turned my stomach more than any bruise he'd ever left. The judge, a woman in her late 50s, reviewed the documents in silence for a long time. Logan's attorney, a man who looked like he spent more time on golf courses than in courtrooms, argued that Logan had made mistakes, but was committed to co-parenting peacefully. Nathan stood. Your Honor, my client isn't asking for vengeance. She's asking for safety. She's asking for peace. And she's provided evidence, not just words, of a man who's willing to use violence, manipulation, and stalking to maintain control. That isn't co-parenting, that's coercion. The judge asked me if I wanted to speak. I rose slowly. I stayed, I said. For too long, because I was scared. Because I thought if I could just be better, calmer, quieter, he'd stop. But abusers don't stop because you become smaller. They stop because someone finally says, enough. My voice didn't shake, not once. When I finished, I sat down beside Nathan. My heart pounded like I'd run a marathon. After reviewing the protective order, the emails and the photos, the judge made her ruling. For now, full temporary custody will remain with the mother. Visitation is suspended until psychological evaluation is completed. A review hearing will be scheduled in 60 days. Logan's face didn't change, but Mallory's did. Her mouth dropped slightly open, and she leaned toward him to whisper something. He didn't respond. He just kept staring at me like I'd stolen something that was his. Outside, Nathan clapped me on the shoulder. You did it. No, I said. I survived it. Now I rebuild. Colleen hugged me tightly. Grace slept in her carrier between us, unaware of how close she'd come to being used as a weapon. But the quiet didn't last. 2 days later, Mallory showed up at the grocery store. She cornered me between the formula aisle and the freezer section. I didn't know how bad it was, she said. I thought he was just stressed. You made him sound like a monster. I kept my voice calm. I didn't make him anything. He showed you who he was. Her eyes dropped to Grace. He still wants her. He thinks you'll slip up. I stared at her. Is that why you're here? To threaten me for him? No. Her voice cracked. I'm here to warn you. He's getting worse. I'm done. But you need to be careful. He's not finished. She walked away without looking back. And I knew. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The day after the hearing, I started divorce paperwork. Nathan laid out the process, detail by detail, like it was a construction blueprint. Financial disclosures, property division, custody terms, visitation language, safety clauses. Everything he could do to protect me, he did. But he said one thing I wasn't prepared for. He'll fight this harder than custody. For people like Logan, marriage isn't about love. It's about ownership, and he's losing control. He was right. 2 days later, a letter showed up at Colleen's door. No return address. Inside was a torn photo of me holding Grace when she was just a week old. Written in Sharpie across the back. You're the liar, not me. I gave you everything. Colleen called the police. Again. I held it together until they left, and then I collapsed into her arms. I feel like I'm being hunted, I whispered. You are, she said, but you're not alone this time. That night, I installed a second lock on the front door. I couldn't afford a security system yet, but I kept a hammer beside the crib and slept with one foot out of bed, always ready to move. But I also fought back. I filed for full custody. I requested a permanent restraining order, and I changed my phone number. Mallory called Nathan 2 days later. She left a message. I'm done being part of this. He's obsessed. He's not sleeping. He talks about Grace like she's a prize to win. I'll testify if I have to. Just don't tell him I called. When Nathan played it for me, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Another step forward. But then came the confrontation. It was early afternoon. I was loading groceries into the car, Grace strapped in her seat, when I heard his voice. Don't scream. Logan. He stepped out from between 2 parked cars, like a ghost from my nightmares. Thinner, eyes red, mouth curled into something halfway between a smile and a threat. I just wanted to see her, he said. I stood in front of the door, keys clenched in my fist. You need to leave. You took her from me. No, I said. You lost her the day you kicked me while she was still inside me. That hit. His eyes flickered. For a second, he looked human again. But then it twisted. You made me do that. You were impossible. I didn't flinch. And now, you're not allowed near her. Ever again. He stepped closer. We both know this isn't over. I said nothing. I kept my eyes on his hands, waiting for him to move. Then, footsteps. A man in the next aisle, another customer. Logan saw him, and the mask dropped. Enjoy your little victory, he hissed, and disappeared back between the cars. I drove straight to the station. Another report. Another file. Another sigh from the officer. We'll add it to the restraining order, but until he physically violates it, our hands are tied. Nathan filed for an emergency hearing. Meanwhile, I didn't leave the house without Colleen. I kept a bat by the front door. And every time Grace laughed, I wrote it down, like proof that good still existed. Logan hadn't won, but he wasn't done fighting. Nathan called first thing Monday morning. The divorce hearing is set for next week, he said, and the judge has agreed to hear Mallory's testimony. But you need to be ready. Logan's filed a counter motion. For what? Partial custody. I nearly dropped the phone. He's claiming emotional manipulation, saying you've isolated Grace from him without cause. He's alleging parental alienation. It's aggressive, desperate, but not surprising. I stared at Grace, who was trying to shove half a banana into her mouth. What happens if he wins? Nathan was quiet. He won't. But we have to prove not just that he's dangerous, but that you're stable, safe, and capable. My chest tightened. I hadn't slept a full night in weeks. I jumped every time headlights swept across the window. My hands shook when I packed the diaper bag. But I'd do anything to protect her, even if it meant standing in court while Logan spun lies in a pressed suit. That night, Mallory emailed her statement. It was brutal and honest. She described Logan's temper, the controlling behavior, the late-night rants about taking back what's his. She included screenshots, audio recordings. One clip had him screaming, "She thinks a piece of paper's going to stop me? Let her try." I listened once, then twice, then forwarded it to Nathan with shaking hands. But even as the legal case strengthened, the fear at home didn't fade. One night, Grace wouldn't stop crying. I was rocking her, pacing, humming lullabies. Colleen was asleep upstairs. It was after midnight. Then I heard it. A soft click from the front porch. I froze. Another click. The handle turning. I grabbed the bat from beside the door and stepped into the hallway. Then, footsteps, fast, retreating. I yanked open the door. The porch was empty, but on the doormat was a single item. One of Grace's old onesies. The pink one with the giraffes. I hadn't packed it when we left. It had been in the laundry the day we escaped. He'd been in the house. Before. My scream woke Colleen. She called the police. They dusted for prints, found nothing, said the restraining order wasn't breached technically. He hadn't entered the home this time. I held Grace to my chest the rest of the night, rocking, humming, whispering the same words over and over. I won't let him win. I won't let him win. But I knew what was coming. He'd been building to something, and I would have to be ready, not just legally, but physically. The next day, I called a women's self-defense group, signed up for a class. I stopped waiting to feel safe. I started building a life where I was. The courthouse felt different this time. Not like a battleground, not like a trap, but like a place where truth might finally matter. I wore black, not to mourn, but to armor myself. Colleen waited outside with Grace, ready to take her home if needed. Nathan was already inside, briefing Mallory, who had arrived quietly. No makeup, simple sweater, nerves in her hands. Logan sat alone. No lawyer. No Mallory. He was representing himself. Nathan whispered, "It's a tactic." To seem humble. The father fighting for his child alone. Judges see through it. But it still rattles. It didn't rattle me. The judge opened the session. Calm, professional. She laid out what was at stake: final custody, divorce decree, child support, and permanent restraining order. Logan stood first. He spun his web with the same charm he used on me, once. He painted me as paranoid, overly emotional, vindictive, claimed I'd weaponized motherhood, said I was alienating Grace from a loving father who only wanted peace. I watched the judge's face, impassive, professional. Then Nathan stood. He played the audio recordings, read the emails, held up the photo of the onesie. He read Mallory's sworn statement, every detail. Then the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Alden, would you like to speak?" I stood, hands steady. I stayed in that marriage because I was afraid of being alone, of being wrong, of being called crazy. But I'm not afraid anymore. He didn't protect me. He endangered me. And he tried to turn our daughter into a weapon. I won't let that happen. Not again. Logan didn't flinch. The judge nodded once, then recessed for a short deliberation. 10 minutes later, she returned. Her ruling was firm, full legal and physical custody to me. No visitation, no contact. Child support ordered, divorce finalized, restraining order extended indefinitely. It was done. Logan didn't speak, didn't even look at me, just gathered his papers and left the courtroom without a word. Outside, I cried. Not loudly, just enough to feel something come loose in my chest. Colleen hugged me. Mallory approached quietly. He'll blame me, but I don't care anymore. Thank you, I said. No, she said. Thank you for surviving, for not letting him win. 2 weeks later, I signed the lease on a small apartment. Modest, bright, safe. I enrolled Grace in a daycare 2 blocks away. I accepted a remote promotion at work. I started walking again, cooking, laughing. Healing didn't happen in a straight line. Some nights I still locked the door twice. Some nights I jolted awake at nothing. But every morning, Grace smiled up at me. And I knew I'd won more than a legal case. I'd reclaimed our lives. And I would never let anyone take them from us again.